So this one, you can actually use some reasoning just to get it right off the bat. If the recipe is going from 2 1/4 cups of flour to 3 cups of flour, you're going to need more, right? So we're going to need more than a half a pound of butter. And the only one here that's more than a half is this last one, 2/3, right? 1/6 is smaller than a half, 1/4 is smaller than a half, 3/8 is smaller than a half because a half would be 4/8, right? So super fast, the answer is D, 2/3, simply by process of elimination. But if it weren't so easy and we had to solve it, let's solve it anyway, right? So now the big key word in this one, they even tell you proportion. When they say proportion, we say yay, because we know how to set up proportions. And you're just going to keep the proportions straight. And there's lots of ways you can do it that the multiplication is going to be the same. So long as you set up like flour to butter, you're going to be okay. So we're going to do 2 1/4 cups of flour to 1/2 pound of butter, and 3 cups of flour to we don't know how much butter. So I write out the labels when I start to make sure I'm flour, butter, butter. And so that's good. And now I'm going to solve by just cross multiplying. So the 2 1/4 times x, and I'm going to change that 2 1/4, that's 2 1/4. Quarter is 25 cents. So I'm going to change it to decimal, just it's going to be a little bit nicer. Normally I like fractions, but here this is going to be okay. So 2 1/4, 2.25 times the x is going to equal 3 times a half. So 3 times a half is better known as 0.5. So 2.25 times x, and 3 times a half, if you punch that in on your calculator, or you just know a half of 3 is 1.5, so 1.5. One last thing, to solve for x, the x is being multiplied by the 2.25, so to undo that multiplication, we divide both sides by 2.25. That fancy form of 1 just goes away to leave you with the x, and 1.5 divided by 2.25. Remember that fraction bar means divide, so on your calculator you just hit 1.5 divided by 2.25, and you get 0.666666 all the way, kind of evil, right? And you're looking and you're like, oh darn, I don't see it there. They've got fractions. So one way to check it from this point is to just see which one equals this. This is 1 divided by 6. 1 divided by 6 is 0.166. Oh, so close, 0.166, but it's not good enough. 1/4 is 0.25, that's not that. 3 divided by 8 is 0.375, and 2 divided by 3, this is our man. He matches, he goes on forever. So it turns out 2/3 is kind of a good one to have memorized anyway. Some of the common, so we are done, it is still D. That's the end of that problem. But for a separate kind of tangent, good fractions to know. We mentioned 0.5, we know that's a half, right? We know a quarter is a quarter. We know a third is 0.333 repeating. That kind of comes up a lot, it's worth knowing. And therefore 2/3 is twice that, so 0.666 repeating. And just for kicks, you can ignore this if you want. I think I do this on another video too. 3/3, by the same token, if I multiplied, if 1/3 is 3 times, if 3/3 is 3 times 1/3, then it would be 3 times this. So if I multiply all those 3's by 3, I get 0.999 repeating. But isn't 3 divided by 3 1? So it turns out that 1 is actually equal to 0.999999 repeating, and you prove it in calculus, and it's kind of cool. But you don't have to think it's cool now. And that's all I wanted to say about